Dirk Nowitzki and Dwyane Wade. Two guys you would never expect to be compared to each other by the end of their careers. But both of them finished their career in similar fashion. Both of them became the first ever honorary All-Stars to be selected to the All-Star team, a great gesture by Adam Silver, to honor these two former superstars with incredible careers. Both have a tremendous amount of respect for each other. But with that being said, they've had their moments where it got kinda rocky, and for most of their careers, they were not the best of friends. In this video, we're gonna take a look at the full history between Dirk Nowitzki and Dwyane Wade. To start things off, Dirk was drafted in 1998, while Wade was drafted in 2003. 5 years apart is a pretty long time, but both players quickly made a name for themselves. By the time Wade got drafted, Dirk was already a superstar. In 2003, Dirk led the Mavs to the Western Conference Finals, but unfortunately, they would lose to the Spurs in 6 games. Dirk actually got injured in that series, and if he didn't, it might have been a different story. But at this time, Dirk established himself as a top 10 player in the NBA, while Wade hasn't even stepped on an NBA court. A few months later, he would, and Wade got off to a very quick start, with a ton of hype and expectations. Much more so than when Dirk entered the league, who was kind of unknown when he was younger. The entire 2003 draft class was memorable for that very reason. A draft class that many reporters believed that could potentially become the greatest draft class in NBA history. By 2004, Wade would be joined by one of Dirk's Western Conference rivals, Shaquille O'Neal. With Wade and Shaq leading the way, they were now a legit championship contending team. In the 2005 playoffs, the Miami Heat would barely lose in the Eastern Conference Finals. If it wasn't for D. Wade getting injured in the middle of the series, maybe the Heat could have won as well. Sounds familiar, right? Yeah, both D. Wade and Dirk were so close to reaching the finals at that time, but the injuries ruined those chances. However, both of them were determined to get there, and continue to put in the work and continue to get better. This all culminated in 2006. The Dallas Mavericks and the Miami Heat would make the NBA Finals, a matchup between two teams, neither of which have ever made the finals in their franchise's history before. Now, at this time, Dallas was seen as the superior team. They were coming off an incredible run to the finals, and almost everyone believed that they would win the championship. And from the get-go, it certainly looked that way. They convincingly won the first 2 games by 10 points and 14 points respectively. And in Game 3, it was looking like the same story. At one point, Dallas had a 15-point lead in the 4th quarter. If they took Game 3 and went up 3 games to 0, it was over. There's no coming back from that. But the 4th quarter was where they fell apart. Dwyane Wade took over and the Mavericks collapsed. Not only that game, but the next 3 games as well, and as you know, they would eventually lose 4 straight in the series. But what made the series interesting was the tension behind the Mavericks locker room. While normally a stoic, well-organized team, they absolutely fell apart, mainly off the court. After they lost Game 5 in devastating fashion, this tension reached an all-time high. According to a report, after the game, Coach Avery Johnson lost his composure in the post-game news conference, and Nowitzki kicked several items, including a stationary bicycle on the way to the locker room. Owner Mark Cuban was fined $250,000 for his outbursts. Nowitzki was fined $5,000. The entire team criticized the officiating and how Wade was getting almost every single call every time he drove to the rim, even with the slightest amount of contact. While Dirk was furious at the lopsided foul calls, Mark Cuban was livid, and he was actually the most critical of Wade's free throw calls. As you can see here, in the last 4 games, Wade shot an absurd number of free throws, especially in games 5 and 6, where he shot almost as many as the entire Mavericks team. With that being said, the Mavs have had trouble all year defending super athletic wing players like D. Wade. And this was the same season where Kobe outscored their entire team 62-61 through 3 quarters. Additionally, the city of Dallas in general, they got really cocky. After being up 2-0, according to a report, the Dallas Morning News printed the city of Dallas's official championship parade plans, and Cuban repeatedly gloated about planning to wear only a Speedo when he accepted the Larry O'Brien trophy from Commissioner David Stern. On the other hand, the young, 24-year-old Dwyane Wade was not fazed. In fact, this motivated him even further as he thought it was silly that the Mavs were already assuming they would win the championship. In an interview, when people were talking about all his foul calls, he responded by saying, "I started attacking the basket. They like to talk about the fouls in that series, but I was attacking every play. You gonna foul me, I'm gonna finish. That's the way my mentality was." The 2006 finals, that was the series where Wade went from a rising young superstar to an all-time great. He averaged nearly 35 points a game and outplayed Dirk in every possible way. However, there was a lot of criticism about his foul calls to the point where it really pissed him off. In fact, Dirk sarcastically confronted Wade about it. Then Wade responded with, "Dirk says they gave us the championship last year, but he's the reason they lost the championship, because he wasn't the leader that he's supposed to be in the closing moments." And of course, as you can guess, these comments pissed off the entire city of Dallas. Afterwards, both teams kinda fell off for a couple of years. The Mavericks would lose in the first round in 3 of the next 4 years, and the Heat would also lose in the first round in 3 of the next 4 years, including a season when they missed the playoffs entirely. Fortunately for the Heat, they were able to acquire LeBron James and Chris Bosh in the 2010 offseason. With their new super team, they ripped through the entire playoffs and once again made it back to the finals. The Mavs, on the other hand, they were getting kinda old. Every starter on their team was over 30 years old, with the exception of Tyson Chandler. Nobody expected them to make the finals at all, let alone sweep the defending champion Lakers. So once again, the Mavs and Heat are standing face to face, but this time the Mavs are the underdogs. And this time it was Dwyane Wade and the Heat celebrating too early. In danger of going down 0-2, Dirk and the Mavs mounted a furious fourth quarter comeback. In Game 2, down by 15 points with 6 minutes left in the game, the Mavs came all the way back and won. This time, it was the Miami Heat looking like a bunch of fools. Before Game 5 started and the series was tied at 2-2, there was a report that Dirk was experiencing some flu-like symptoms. But Wade and LeBron mocked him for being sick, thinking that Dirk was just making excuses. Keep in mind, at this time, pretty much the entire world hated LeBron and Wade and the Heat as a team, so it became a big deal and this was a low-class move by them, because Dirk was actually sick and played Game 4 while being sick. After this event, the Mavs won the next 2 games and finished them off, closing out the series as Dirk captured his first ever NBA championship. Head-to-head, both Wade and Dirk played very well, and while the narrative is that, Dirk carried the 2011 Mavs by himself, he did, however, somewhat struggle in the finals, while guys like Jason Terry and JJ Barea stepped up big time. On the other hand, nobody really recognized Wade's incredible performance, and that's because LeBron was so bad that everyone criticized him to no end. While Dirk and D-Wade's relationship got off to a rocky start, they've gotten older and put all that stuff to the side. Despite the tensions, they've always respected each other as opponents on the court. Over the years, both of them saw their careers slowly go downhill as they're no longer the same players they once were, not even close. They've slowly became friends and realized that if it wasn't for each other, then neither of them would become the players they became. Looking back, Wade said, "You appreciate having someone like that that's a part of your journey, that pushes you. We're an important part of each other's story. If we don't lose that finals in 2011, we're still going, me and Bron still fighting it out to see who's the best. I took a step back at that point and kind of let him take over, an organization that I would call mine before that." In response, Dirk said, "I always say he pushed me to become the player in 11 to ultimately win. There were some things said after the 2006 finals and both sides didn't love it. There were some times that we didn't speak much, but I always watched from afar. We're older. When you're young, you compete, you're stubborn. There were a few guys where I was just not that friendly with. We played against the Spurs every year in the playoffs and I didn't love those guys either. With both players retiring at the same time, it was meant to happen." A lot of people over the years have said that, who was Dirk's biggest rival? Probably Tim Duncan, maybe? Who was Dwyane Wade's biggest rival? Well, before they teamed up, it was probably LeBron. But when it comes down to it, all of Dirk and D-Wade's greatest moments came while playing against each other. All of their growth, all of their disappointments, all of their best years, they were on the floor together. Both finals appearances had seemingly opposite results, with each team taking sides and being cocky and arrogant, but then end up losing. It couldn't be a better story. And that's all, folks. That sums up the history between Dirk Nowitzki and Dwyane Wade. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts on these two players, and where would you rank them all time? Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, I'll see you next time. Peace.